I got too greedy. It was that last 2 million that must have done it. Should have just let that one go. I knew there was something wrong with that account. Now they were getting close. It looked like they thought that I didn't know it yet, though. That would help. I still had time to get away and make sure that they couldn't track me down any further. Thankfully, I had a plan for this. So, who am I, and who is trying to track me down? Who I am right now isn't important, as this identity is about to completely disappear. In 2 hours, I will be someone completely different. The trail that the hunters are following will dead end before they can get enough information to figure out who I am. What I am, or soon to be is a hacker. I am a very good hacker. I'm also a very angry hacker with a very select list of targets. I go after drug cartels. I go after their bank accounts and supply incriminating evidence to the proper authorities. I am personally responsible for the convictions of 4 politicians, at least 50 cops, a dozen soldiers in different countries, and so many small-time dealers that I can't even count. I've also drained well over $100 million from their coffers. Of course, I take a percentage of that, but about 80% ends up with different charities. Most deal with drug abuse and rehab programs. Why, you ask? Simple. My younger sister got involved with the wrong guy. I really didn't like him, but she didn't listen to me. I did what I could, but she made her choice. I had tried my best to take care of her after our parents died. I was always really good with computers, but the 2 dark years I spent in depressed isolation after identifying what was left of her body turned me from really good to almost magical. Those 2 years were spent alone in the basement of my parents' old house, learning the dark secrets and how to manipulate them. I learned to code. I discovered how to navigate the dark web. I discovered back doors into most security software. Sometime in those 2 years, some very damaging information on the drug gang that tortured and murdered my sister ended up in the hands of the DEA. Unfortunately, rival gangs somehow got the information that the gang in question was turning the state's evidence on others to try and make a deal. Gangs move faster than cops, so the state saved a bunch of money on trials. Now, as for who I am running from, my best guess right now is either Russian or North Korean hackers. Even though I'm not sure which it is, I am sure that they were hired by the cartel that I had just relieved of about $30 million. I really should have stopped at $28 million, but then I discovered that other small account. I knew there was something wrong with it, but I was young, dumb, and still angry. As soon as that money was on its way through 40 different accounts in 6 countries, my counter-hacking programs started alarming. Someone had put a backtracking program in the account. They were looking for where the attack was initiated. That was going to take a while. I was using a botnet attack. They were going to have to cycle through about 100 IP addresses before they could even start the roundabout server chain track. I put in a flash drive and gave a few keystrokes and mouse clicks. 4 servers in Europe fried. 2 servers in China reformatted themselves 6 times. 1 server in Iran and another in America rewrote their entire memory with a random series of 1s and 0s. The trail back to me was effectively severed with no way to retrieve the data. 3 more mouse clicks and my carefully crafted machines were reduced to useless scraps of wires, plastic, and fried silicon. The abandoned building I was using burned down from a homeless campfire that got out of control. Most of my wrecked computer system had been divided up and thrown in random dumpsters around the city. The hard drives and memory sticks were burned in a bonfire out in the desert, along with all my personal identification. After making sure that there would be no way to get any information from the burning pile of rubble, I got in the van and started driving west. I arrived in Las Vegas 4 days later. 5 years later. Honey, can you give me a hand here? The computer is acting up again. I called out to my beautiful wife, Linda. Seriously, Mark, how is it possible that a 25-year-old man is so clueless about computers? What would you do without me? She said as she gave me a quick kiss on the top of my head. A couple of quick clicks and keystrokes, and I was back to checking my email. Dinner will be ready in about half an hour. Thanks, honey. I replied as I watched her walk back into the kitchen. It had been 2 years since Linda and I had gotten married. I still couldn't believe how lucky I was. After leaving my previous life, I had recreated myself. I was working as a truck driver for a local lumber yard. We were a union yard, so the pay was decent. I had very carefully retrieved a couple $100,000 from one of my offshore accounts and bought a nice, modest 3-bedroom house on about an acre of property. I put up a steel building next to the house to use as a shop and storage. I also added a hidden room to rebuild and upgrade my computer system. It was a small walk-in storage room, but it had a false floor that would rise up to access a set of stairs leading underground. If you didn't know how to open it up, it looked just like a regular concrete floor. I had decided that I would back off from going after dealers and cartels for a while. I had enough money tucked away if I needed it, and it was prudent to disappear and let things cool off. Still, I didn't want to lose my skills, and I needed to keep up with the newer technology. The shop was for my hobby of building up older muscle cars. The wife was completely not interested in that, so she never came into my shop. This also gave me the time and privacy to get online and play a bit without her suspecting anything. You may be wondering why I am hiding that from her. The truth is that she knows me as a simple truck driver and shade tree mechanic who is almost clueless about computers. Obviously, when I met her and we began dating, I couldn't just come out and introduce myself as a hacker called Ghost in the computer underground. First off, the feds were looking for me. I had committed a few cyber crimes, and they also wanted to lock me in a room and use my skills for their own purposes. Second, there were several very bad criminal organizations that had me on their target list. If they caught me, my end would be very ugly and extremely painful. How long would our relationship have lasted after that? Do you even need to ask? There were a couple more matters after we were married. First, it was for her own protection. If she didn't know, they couldn't use her for any information. Second, this ensured that she didn't accidentally let any information slip on accident. Nope. Better that she only knows the man she married. A bit about my wife. First, she is the most beautiful woman on the planet, to me. I always read in these stories how every woman is always the most beautiful woman on the planet, and I wonder how there can be more than one of them. I'm not going to lie to you. She may be only above average in looks to you, but she is a goddess to me. Different viewpoints and different strokes. She is 5 feet, 6 inches tall, with wavy copper hair to the middle of her back, emerald green eyes, 34D breasts, a slim waist with a flat tummy, and slightly wide 40-inch hips. Her legs are long, lean, toned, and tan. Her face has a slim nose, high cheekbones, dimples when she smiles, full bow-tie kissable lips, and a proud chin that isn't too prominent. So, how did we meet? I was working at the lumber yard one afternoon when she came in. She needed a couple of boards to put up some shelving in her new apartment. I just happened to be lucky enough to be near the salesman when he rang up her order and volunteered to get the boards. While we were picking out her order, she mentioned that she really wasn't very handy with tools. Obviously, I offered to come over after work and install the shelves for her. My price was that she buys the beer and allows me to buy dinner the next evening. Dinner rolled over into dancing afterward. Sorry, guys and gals. No wild intimacy here. The date ended with just a chaste kiss on the cheek. The truth of the matter was that I was actually terrified of girls. It wasn't until the 5th date that we had intimacy. I took her to the Stratosphere for dinner. From there, we moved to a hot dance club on the Strip. After a bottle of expensive wine with dinner and a few drinks at the club between dances over 2 hours, we ended up back at my house. I thought that she was beautiful before, but she was an absolute goddess out of her clothes. I didn't even need to ask. The soaked sheets answered my questions about being okay. As long as I made her happy, I was fine. Linda and I dated for about 6 months before I proposed. 6 months later, we got married. We were happy together. She was an accountant for a large national company with an office in Las Vegas. She made pretty good money there, and we combined our incomes to live a pretty nice life. I never needed to dip into my secret accounts. We went out to the nicer restaurants, took in the shows, had a nice pontoon boat at the lake, and both drove nice cars. Our love life was pretty good. We would average about 4 times a week. We didn't have children yet, so our lovemaking happened pretty much all over the house, backyard, swimming pool, and hot tub. We liked the variety and employed several different positions. Typically, after I got home from work, I would go into my shop and tinker around for a couple of hours before dinner. About half the time I would be working on one of my cars, and the other half I would be in the room playing around on the computer. I wasn't really doing anything bad, just hacking into places that I shouldn't be in. I never actually took anything or put anything in the system. I was just getting in and looking around to keep my skills up. Sure, I could have stolen a lot of data and money, but I didn't want to leave any tracks. Best to just break in and look without anyone knowing that I was there. After dinner, we would snuggle on the couch and watch a movie before going to bed. Sometimes bed would include a couple of hours of intimacy before falling asleep, and other times it would just fade away as we cuddled. I kept up my public appearance of being completely technologically incompetent. After all, who would look at someone who could barely check their email and think that they were one of the most wanted hackers in the world? All the time, I was breaking into a bank, government, and big business computer systems. I also reconfigured the bot army of personal computers that I had before. I was masking my location by initiating my hacks from foreign servers, sometimes multiple servers at the same time. About 6 months ago, I noticed that Linda was becoming a bit more stressed. It really didn't seem to be that big of a deal, though. Intimacy dropped from about 4 times a week to twice a week. She was working longer hours and was tired when she got home. Most of the time, she would just go straight to the shower, eat dinner, then go to bed. I asked her, and she said something about a big account that they were trying to get. Seemed plausible. Occasionally, she would call me from her office on a Friday and let me know that she was going out to happy hour after work with a few of the other people at work. She had done this enough time before that I wasn't worried. After about 6 months of this, I asked how much longer this would be going on. I figured that they should have either gotten the account or lost it by this time. Linda told me that it would probably be only another week or 2, then things would settle down again. I had decided that she needed a little pampering since she had been working so hard, so I got her a full-day spa package for that Saturday. She was thrilled when I gave it to her on Wednesday evening. Saturday finally came, and she left for her spa day at 9 a.m. With a quick kiss, she was out the door. She wouldn't be back until about 4 in the afternoon. I grabbed my coffee and went out to the shop to finish putting together an engine that I had on the stand. About an hour later, I took a break and went into my computer room. Up until then, I had purposely avoided hacking into Linda's company. It was one of those don't poop in your own kitchen kind of things. I was pretty adamant about it, too. I didn't mess with the company I worked for, and I wouldn't mess with the company she worked for either. After logging on and checking my security programs, I started to get curious about what this big account was. Maybe I should see what it was and perhaps take a look around their servers to see what was there. Just a quick look, then see about hacking into the new client system. Their security was child's play. I was in within a couple of minutes. First stop, Linda's PC. She was working on the project, so I should be able to get pointed in the right direction from there. Odd. Nothing really stood out about any big new clients. I ran a few searches with keywords for proposal, new client, quote, and a few others that were related to trying to win a new account. Nothing. I began drilling down through her folders. That's when I found a locked folder that was titled Photos for James. What? Why does Linda have a folder with photos for that little weasel in IT? Yes, I knew who James was. I had met him a few times at some of the corporate events that I went to with Linda. I didn't really like him very much. Although Linda thought she was actually pretty proficient with computers, and compared to the general population she was still no match for me. I unlocked the folder in seconds, and I was in. To say that I was shocked would be the understatement of the year. There were dozens of photos of Linda naked in her office. There were more photos of her with someone in her mouth. There were others of her where the guy took her picture as she was being intimate with him. Worst of all, she even had pictures with some guy entering her back, the same thing she constantly denied me. I sat and stared at the pictures numbly. I felt a piece of me die at that moment. About 15 minutes later, I snapped out of it and began thinking of confronting her as soon as she got home. Divorcing the cheating woman was a foregone conclusion. I still had several hours before she got home, so I continued to search for more information. I figured that this probably started about 6 months ago when I first noticed a change in her. I pulled up her email and got an even bigger shock. Several of their email conversations indicated that this was much more long-term than I thought. They seemed to have been lovers for about a year before she even met me. If that was the case, why did she even begin dating me in the first place? What was going on? I found another email where she mentioned something about accounting errors with a few of her bigger clients, as well as their own company. Then there was something about an offshore account. I switched over to James's computer. There were more photos of Linda. Several were of her in what looked like a motel room and another man's bedroom. James was a much better person with computers than Linda, but still no match for me. I was going to need more time on this, so I ended up copying both his and Linda's computers, as well as their folders on the company network onto a free drive on my server. Out of habit, I checked the personnel folder on the server. I stopped for a minute when I saw my name on one of the folders. I copied that one too. Before leaving the network, I planted some spyware on both computers as well as the server. This would automatically forward everything they did to my computer system. Needless to say, any work on my cars was put on the back burner for a while. Linda came back from her spa day and thanked me with a long night of amazing intimacy. Yeah, I was disgusted with her for what she was doing, but I'm a guy. I'm not passing up the opportunity to have an amazing time with a beautiful, enthusiastic, and energetic woman. She could be the devil incarnate, and I would still tap that. Oh, right. To me, she was the devil incarnate. Little head didn't care, and big head just decided to go along for the ride. Sunday came, and I was back out in my shop. Linda was still sleeping when I got up, so I took the opportunity to open her phone and plant some spyware on it. Text messages would be secretly copied to my computer system, and all her phone calls would be bugged and recorded digitally on a separate hard drive. I would also be able to track everything she did online. Linda left at around 10 in the morning. She said that she was going to meet one of her friends for some shopping. She had her Friend Finder app turned off on her phone, and I didn't really want to accidentally notice that it had been turned on, so I instead hacked into her car's internal GPS to track her. Surprisingly, she actually did go to the mall. When I was sure that she wouldn't be returning soon, I went back into the house and grabbed her laptop. The first thing was to copy everything on her laptop onto another hard drive. Next, I loaded up a keylogger program and set up the camera for remote access. I didn't think that I had a whole lot of time before I had to get her laptop back where she left it, but I figured that I could take a quick look at her browser history. That's when I found a second email address. I also noticed that she had several visits to a bank in the Cayman Islands. I would need to look at that later. I wiped a bit of grease and oil on my arms and face to make it look like I was actually working on a car when I heard Linda arrive back home. Shower, dinned, movie, then bed. For the next week, I kept up appearances of being the clueless, doting husband that I pretended to be. Every evening, I went out to the shop pretending to be working on one of my cars for a couple of hours. I dutifully smeared grease on myself before coming back to the house. In fact, I was going over the mountains of information that I was collecting. It was Tuesday evening when I read a text exchange between Linda and James that caught my attention. James had cautioned her about erasing the history on my laptop after using it. Why would she be using my laptop? Hers was working fine. Of course, I had set my laptop up to connect to my servers as soon as I bought it, but never really thought about spying on myself. A dozen keystrokes and mouse clicks later, that was resolved. The next evening, while I was sorting through the day's updates from their work computers, another stream of data started to come through. I quickly saw that it was from my personal laptop. Minimizing everything else, I started to look at the new stream coming over. It looked like money transfers were happening. I turned on my laptop's camera and pulled the feed to another screen. There was Linda working on my computer. She was wearing a Bluetooth in her ear as well. The mic was picking up her voice as she talked. I used a third screen to stream a live feed from her phone call. I watched and listened to Linda following the instructions from James as she transferred about $50,000 from a dummy account in their company over to a bank in the Cayman Islands, and they were using my computer to do it. She finished soon after, deleted the history for that day, and logged off. What the hell was going on here? I really hadn't had time to look at my personnel file from their HR folder yet, as it didn't seem to be as important as other things. That changed right then. It seemed that I had been set up as a computer security consultant. I really did respect the detail that they used in creating my fake credentials. James had apparently hired me since he was head of their IT department. I also found several payments for my services, all going to the Cayman Island account, of course. Let's review. I had been unknowingly hired as a computer security consultant. Linda and James were using my computer and IP address to transfer large sums of money from a fake account at their firm to an offshore bank. Furthermore, Linda and James have been having an affair since before I met Linda. I was beginning to understand that I was being set up for something. Time to switch gears. Now that I had figured out what was going on, I needed to see how bad it was and figure out what to do about it. It was bad. Checking the Cayman Islands account, I saw it had almost $10 million in it. Checking the transfers, I saw that they had been doing this since about 6 months after Linda and I got married. They also weren't being very subtle about trying to hide what computer was being used to steal the money either. Worse, a deeper dig into the personnel file in my name showed a few red flags. Yep, when the storm hit the fan, I was the one in the target zone. Now, what was I going to do about it? Surprisingly, it really wasn't that difficult to act normally around the cheating woman. I just let Little Head take charge whenever she was around. Did she want to mess me over? I would gladly mess her, as I set about really messing them both. What can I tell you? She's hot. Yes, I took every opportunity to have intimacy with her. The next Saturday, I went through her emails during the time we met. That's when I found out that they picked me for a patsy from day one. Yes, she thought that I was attractive and that having intimacy with me wouldn't exactly be a chore, but she was a bit concerned with my apparent lack of computer skills. James thought that it would be a bonus. The less I knew about operating computers, the less likely I would be to discover their plan. Little did they know. Now I needed a plan for my revenge. I began setting everything up. First off, a couple of new bank accounts were set up. Next, I activated the bot army that I created. Most of the bot army would be distractions, but I had one small group that could be traced, although it would be difficult. Only a really good hacker would be able to map it back to the origin. I didn't want it to be too easy. Of course, I wiped the personnel folder with my name on it from Linda's company servers. I also broke in and changed all the file transfers that were done on my laptop to show a different IP address. To prevent that from happening again, I set off a really nasty virus on my laptop, then disconnected it from my secret servers. Later that evening, when I went to check my email, I discovered that a virus had attacked my laptop from a spam email that I opened and pretty much destroyed it. I didn't mention the look of concern on Linda's face when she saw what happened. The next morning, I saw a text exchange between Linda and James. Apparently, they were almost at the end of the scam. They just wanted 2 more transfers to make it to an even $10 million before springing the trap on me. The plan was to suddenly discover the theft. Of course, since Linda would be the one to actually discover it, she would be in charge of the investigation. James, being the IT manager, would be running the cyber part of the investigation. Unsurprisingly, everything would lead straight back to me. Linda would, of course, have me served with divorce papers while I sat in jail, then eventually marry James after about a year. Both would proclaim their complete shock that I would ever do something like that. Of course, there would be some suspicion about Linda's possible involvement, but she would point to her investigation and discovery, as well as her belief that I must have been hiding my knowledge of computers from her. Also, it must be obvious that she was a victim since I specifically targeted her and used her to gain access to the company's computer systems. They both laughed at the thought of me trying to answer questions about where the money went when I had no idea what the police were talking about. Linda also said she would get me a new laptop, and that they could make the last transfers within the next 3 weeks. Now, I knew what my deadline was. Monday, I went in and told my boss that I needed the week off for some personal stuff. I had plenty of vacation time, and he was a pretty cool guy, so it wasn't a problem. I did some online checking to find the meanest, dirtiest, aggressive shark for a divorce lawyer in the city and made an appointment for the next day. They thought that they had 3 weeks, but they would be lucky to last 2 weeks. Returning home, I fired up my computer system and went to work. I logged onto James's home computer. For an IT guy, you would think that he would have enough sense to shut it down and power it off when he wasn't using it. Nope. All he did was turn off the monitor. I was running his computer through a server in Belarus. Not that it really mattered, because that link would be erased anyway. His computer would be the end of the trail for anyone following it. The cartel that I had hit 5 years ago had at least learned something about security. They had changed their accounts and passwords, but still used the same banks. Upgraded passwords? They only work when you don't store them on your personal computers and are vulnerable to phishing software embedded in email links for items that any multimillionaire would want. This was just the preliminary work. I would wait until I was finished with Linda before going after James. James wasn't going to survive this, and I still needed to use him for Linda's downfall. I was still monitoring Linda's GPS on her car, so I was able to leave and go to a park for about an hour before returning home. She didn't need to know that I took the week off. Actually, she probably did need to know, but I wasn't going to give her that piece of information to try and save herself. Per usual, I went out to my shop to work on my car. She did leave to run to Walmart and get me a new laptop. While she was gone, I did some preliminary work on setting her up. It was important for her to be at home when her computer was used. If she could show that she wasn't home, she could have a defense for the crime. Couldn't let that happen. She texted me when she got home to let me know that she got me a new laptop and told me it would take her about an hour to set it up for me. I thanked her and went to work. First off, eliminate all connections with James. I hated her, but I still didn't want any actual bodily harm to come to her. James was probably going to be tortured and killed, but Linda was just going to go to prison for the next couple of decades. Who knows? Perhaps she will enjoy being some Bull Dyke's cheating woman. Doesn't the saying go, gay for the stay? I used a separate server route into Linda's laptop. No roundabout path here, just a straight link to her work computer, then the company servers. $20 million was moved from the company to 4 different accounts in her name. Next, travel plans were made. A one-way ticket for her was purchased for Thursday morning to the Cayman Islands. Before leaving her computer, I deleted James from her contacts, erased all her emails with him, and removed all her history from the account that they were originally using. Next, I removed all the spyware that I had installed. This was a risk, but I didn't figure that she would have enough time to do anything too bad. Last, I severed and erased the link that I had with her laptop. With all that done, I remotely shut down the wireless router to the house. I had a separate and much better one in the shop. Of course, she didn't know that. A message popped up from the spyware that I had put on her phone. Apparently, she had finished setting up my laptop for me when the internet went out. She was just about to use my computer for another transfer when the connection was lost. I laughed. While they were discussing the problem, I moved all the money that they had already stolen into the new accounts I had created in Linda's name. Once that account was empty, I closed it. The last thing I did was erase the spyware on Linda's phone. I didn't know who would be looking at it later and didn't want anyone to find out that she was being spied on. I then shut everything down and went inside for dinner. Tomorrow would be an interesting day, to say the least. Linda was a bit agitated, to say the least, when I came into the house. She told me that my new computer was set up and ready, but that the internet was down. I wouldn't be able to log on and check my email until it was fixed. She had no clue how little of a problem that was for me. She was preoccupied throughout the entire movie that night. I watched out of the corner of my eye as she played on her phone. I could almost feel her frustration growing. When asked if there was a problem, she just passed it off as a client issue at work. I suspected that she had been trying to access the account and failing. She was also texting with someone. I was smiling as I went to bed. No intimacy that night. The next morning, I was up and out of the house before Linda left for work. I basically just screwed around until my appointment with the lawyer. I did wonder how Linda's day was going for her. I would be finding out in a couple of hours, though. I was finally led into my lawyer's office. You know those TV shows where a beautiful lawyer wearing a very professional but extremely sexy suit walks into the courtroom and pretty much hands opposing counsel their back on a silver platter? That was my lawyer. 5'6" tall, angelic face, curves that would make a race car lose control, legs for miles, and breasts that would start a war. 2 minutes into the meeting, I could tell that she would be a barracuda in the courtroom. You could almost hear Hart belting out the chorus in the room. Verifying that everything was confidential, I explained that my wife had been cheating on me throughout our relationship. I further explained to her about the embezzlement and setup. She asked how I found out about all this, and I gave her a partial answer. I didn't exactly lie, but I didn't tell her the whole truth either. Okay, I completely lied. I told her that I used my wife's laptop because mine was not working right. That's when I saw a folder with a bunch of inappropriate pictures, then found her emails to her lover. The emails documented her betrayal and their embezzlement. I just wanted to get out of the marriage before the storm hit the fan. She agreed to take the case and begin preparing the paperwork. She said that she could probably have her served by the end of the week. I told her to hold on to it for a while. I suddenly had a better idea for it and didn't want to be exposed too much too soon. We wrapped up the meeting, and I went home, fired up my system, restarted the house Wi-Fi, and went to work. I had left the spyware on at Linda's work. Apparently, the storm was hitting the fan at full force. An emergency meeting was held first thing in the morning. The $20 million theft had been discovered, and an investigation was launched. By this time, I had managed to crack James's phone. James was tracking the theft and discovered that it led straight back to Linda. He also found that their account had been emptied and transferred into the new accounts with the $20 million from last night. Accusations were flying, and no excuses could be found. Suddenly, Linda received an email saying that she was being summoned to a meeting with the CEO, CFO, and head of security. This should be interesting. The sound of several vehicles pulling into my driveway interrupted my fun. I shut down, went into the main shop area, and secured the hidden door. No need for anyone to take an interest in that room. Yes, I did smear some grease on myself to make it look like I was working on my car. Walking out of the shop, I saw several police vehicles as well as a few large Chevy Suburbans. The police were in their normal uniforms, but the people getting out of the large SUVs wore windbreakers with FBI stenciled on the back. I wonder what this could possibly be about. I barely glanced at the warrants and let them into the house. Of course, I offered all assistance, since I had nothing to hide. Tour guide mode. Yes, that would be my wife's computer. That one is mine, but it hasn't really been used, since we only got it yesterday and the Wi-Fi was down last night. Of course, take anything you think you need. No, I have absolutely no idea what is going on. Sorry, I'm not very proficient at computers, just ask my wife and all our friends. I lost track of what was happening to Linda as I was taken to the police station and interviewed rigorously for a few hours. My story held up through it all. After all, I was just a truck driver with barely any knowledge of computers. No, I had no idea what my wife was doing at work. She was an accountant working with several clients, but I didn't know who those clients were. What do you mean about a one-way ticket out of the country? Just her? No. I have no idea why she would be taking a flight somewhere without me. It soon became obvious to them that I knew nothing about what was going on. They had thoroughly searched my shop but did not find my computer room. Eventually, they let me go back home. Linda had been arrested while I was being interrogated. Poor James was forced to give the evidence against her, as well as seeing all the money located so it could be returned. He must have really felt betrayed when he found that she had taken away his access to it, transferred it into her own accounts, and then booked a single one-way trip out of the country, leaving him with nothing. Thankfully, I had anticipated that I would be interrogated. I was her husband, after all. It would only make sense to assume that I might be working with her on it. Of course, I was her one phone call. Being the dutiful husband, I called and got her a lawyer. Yes, I did my research on all the criminal lawyers in the city. Obviously, I needed to find the best lawyers, so I wouldn't inadvertently screw up and hire one of them for her. No, I purposely hired one of the ones that were just below mediocre. I wouldn't get the worst one, because that could open an appeal for having a poor defense in court. I wanted her convicted and serving her entire sentence. The really cool thing about this being a federal case was that federal prisons do not have parole or time off for good behavior. If you get sentenced to 20 years in federal court, you spend the entire 20 years in federal prison, to the day. I attended her bail hearing and used the house as collateral to bail her out. Since she was a flight risk, she had to wear an ankle monitor. As much as I hated her, I was still able to pretend to be a loving husband to all outward appearances. Thankfully, she was too depressed and shocked at her predicament to want intimacy. Her cell phone had been confiscated for evidence, so I went down and got her a new one. Yes, I took it into my shop and added my spyware to it before giving it to her. Strangely, James had blocked her number after her first text to him. He had replied that he could have no contact with her since he was going to be called as a witness against her. Foolishly, she refused a plea deal, and she insisted that she go to trial. She kept claiming that she had been set up by someone. She actually thought that she would win because she hadn't done what the evidence showed. True, she hadn't. Oh, she was guilty of embezzling half the money that was in that account, just not all the money, or using that particular account, or using her own computer, or buying the plane ticket, or cutting her partner out. Of course, the money was recovered and returned easily. The trial was funny from my viewpoint. It was very interesting watching as James testified on the computer records against her. I could see his inner struggle at having to testify against his lover, yet thinking that she had betrayed him and was planning on skipping out and leaving him behind. All Linda could see, though, was that her soulmate was betraying her and sending her to prison. I was filled with glee throughout the 3 days of his testimony. I watched silently as the love she had for him turned into hate. She did her best on the witness stand testifying on her own behalf. Unfortunately for her, the evidence was too strong against her, and she really couldn't come up with a credible explanation for it. She will be spending the next 20 years in a federal penitentiary. As the trial was winding down, it was time to take care of James. I had a really wicked plan for him, one he would not survive. Unfortunately, he would never know why it happened to him, or that it was me. I couldn't risk that. This would be fun. I had my lawyer modify the divorce documents to consider Linda's conviction and that she would be in prison for the next 2 decades. She was served a couple of days later. I opened a couple of new accounts in Geneva, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands with links back to James. Using the dark web, I left a few subtle footprints, all with a winding trail back to James's IP address. Ghost was back after 5 years. Sure enough, the hacker chats picked it up. Now for the tricky part. I had to leave a trail, but it couldn't be obvious. I needed to make it hard enough for them to believe that it was an expert hacker, and believe that it actually was me, but still let them believe that I made enough of a minor mistake that they could still follow the trail. I had to route through 10 servers in 6 different countries. Eventually, I fired up the bot army and made my attack on the first bank. I eventually got in, found the 2 accounts I was looking for, and emptied them into James's new accounts. Once done, I stopped the attack on the bank, severed and erased my link to James's computer, then got on the dark net to watch for a reaction. I wasn't really expecting anything yet, but it is better to be thorough. The next morning, another attack on a different bank. 4 more accounts were emptied. There was now $20 million in the account that I had set up for James. People were beginning to look for me. They wouldn't find me, of course, but they would eventually find Ghost. A few of the dark web hacker boards were lighting up. There was a North Korean group that looked to be on the trail. It looked like the same group that was tracking me 5 years ago. Time to wrap this up. I went back to the banks. Sure enough, the third one I looked at had the account I was looking for. I bypassed using James's computer and transferred the $20 million to another account in Switzerland that I had set up. Then, I erased all fingerprints from that transfer. I wasn't concerned with the cartel getting that money back. I linked back into James's computer and made another attack on the bank with the account that had an embedded tracker in it. It was only $2 million this time. The money didn't matter, only the tracker attached to it did. I had gotten away the last time because I knew about the thefts and was able to see the tracker working. Had I not known about the money transfers or the accounts I had, and had I not known about the tracker attached to that last account, I would have been caught. I wonder how James will try to explain all of this to them. I wish that I could watch as they asked him where the money was when he had no clue as to what money they were talking about. It was time to sever the link to his computer and erase all my fingerprints. It was a week later. I had cleared out my computer room and turned it into a storage area. I was finishing up the paperwork on a place that I had purchased in Montana through a Subchapter S corporation that kept my name off the books when a news story came on about a missing person. It appears James had not reported to work for a couple of days, and no one knew where he was. His car was found abandoned in the parking lot of one of the malls, but he was nowhere to be found. I wonder where he could be. Oh well. I needed to get back to packing. From the perspective of James. "No!" I screamed as they used the cattle prod on my testes again. "I swear I don't know what you're talking about." "Nonsense, Mr. Ghost. You made a mistake this time. The tracking software that the hackers we hired led us straight to your computer. We found all the data on your computer. We recovered the $2 million from your last hack, but we want to know where the other $20 million, as well as the $30 million from 5 years ago, is. You tell us that, and we will kill you quickly. Keep lying to us, and it will get worse." But I don't know. They had taken me just as I was about to get into my car at the mall. I felt the sting of a needle in my neck, then nothing. I woke up several hours later on a private jet, tied securely to my seat. That's when the questions started. I had no idea what they were talking about. They kept calling me Ghost. They were asking about money that they said I stole. There were $20 million from a few days ago and another $30 million from 5 years ago. They didn't believe me when I said I didn't know anything. I actually pissed my pants when they showed me the hard evidence on my personal computer. I could give them the answers they needed and die quickly, or they would make the rest of my considerably shorter life nothing but intense agony. I pooped myself when I realized that there were no answers that I could give them. Right now, I was hanging naked from the ceiling in a bunker somewhere deep in a jungle in Colombia. My legs were spread apart to give them access to my private parts with a cattle prod. I've been here for 3 days so far. The first day, they had beaten me when I couldn't answer. The second day was the bullwhip. Today, it is a cattle prod to sensitive areas. I really wish that I could give them the answers. I really don't want to know what will happen tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that. Switching back to the perspective of Mark. Moving day. James has been gone for a little over a month. They found his tortured body yesterday on the side of a road in Colombia. Mark would be gone by the end of the day. I would take over my new identity after one more stop. I had already shipped everything that I was taking with me. It was all going to a storage facility in Denver, paid for by wire transfer from an anonymous account. I would pick it up in a truck I paid for in cash. Linda was brought in and cuffed to the table across from me. She didn't look very good. Orange was definitely not her color. No makeup. Her hair was a bit of a mess. She also had bags under her eyes. It looked like she hadn't adjusted well to prison yet. "So, how are you holding up?" I asked. "Please, Mark, you have to help me. I didn't do what they said I did," she begged. "Linda," I sighed, "there's nothing I can do for you. Besides, we are getting a divorce." "Please, Mark, I didn't do it and I don't want a divorce." "Just sign the papers, Linda. It's over." "Please, Mark, just talk to James. See if you can get his help. He can help me. We used to be friends. Please, just ask him," she begged. "You haven't heard about James?" I asked. "No. I keep expecting him to visit, but he never came." "Well, he isn't ever going to visit now. He was killed in Colombia." Her face went white with shock. "Apparently, the authorities believe that he stole a bunch of money from one of the drug cartels." "No, he couldn't have," she said. "He probably didn't, but they seem to have thought he did. Now, Linda, you really need to just sign the divorce papers and let it go." "But you are leaving me with nothing," she exclaimed. "Of course. You don't need anything, and what would you do with anything you get anyway? You are going to be here for the next 20 years, I explained. "Please, Mark, you need to help me. I can't stay here. My cellmate is making me do things. I can't. I need to get out of here. Please." It was time. Let me tell you a story, Linda. Perhaps this will help you. About 5 years ago, there was a really good hacker. They referred to him as Ghost. The hacker got that tag because he was so good at covering his tracks. It literally was just like a ghost had invaded the computer system. So, Ghost decided to go after some drug cartels. It was actually a personal mission. Over $30 million was stolen from one of the cartels before the cartel hired other hackers to track Ghost down. Of course, Ghost saw the trackers coming and shut down before they were found. The Ghost disappeared and created a new life. Ghost ceased to exist and stopped all computer activities, except some minor breaking into systems for practice and keeping up on the technology. To everyone who knew him, he was pretty illiterate with computers. Secretly, he was still as good as ever. Even his wife didn't know who he really was. Yes, he had fallen in love and got married. He really loved his wife with all his heart. After being married for 3 years, he accidentally discovered that his wife was not in love with him. He found that she had been cheating on him throughout their entire relationship with her real boyfriend. To make matters worse, he found out that his wife only married him so she and her boyfriend could set him up to take the fall for the embezzlement that they were doing. Her eyes were as big as dinner plates, and her skin had turned completely white as I revealed her plan back to her. So Ghost decided that he couldn't let that happen, and he formed a plan for revenge against the two. First off, he hacked into their computers, phones, and work networks to gain information. Then, he changed everything to remove his name from the setup and place all the evidence squarely on his wife. He also made arrangements to make his wife's boyfriend believe that she was double-crossing him. The final nail for his wife was forcing her lover to testify against her and put her in prison for years, breaking their hearts and believing that they were betrayed by the other. Much the same as Ghost felt betrayed by his wife. "You," she breathed. Now, to continue, since his wife had been taken care of, it was time to go after her lover. You see, that cartel was still looking for Ghost. Why not get his revenge and make the cartel believe that they had finally caught their prey? 2 birds, 1 stone, and all that stuff. Well, Ghost used his wife's lover's computer to hack in and steal a bunch more money from that cartel. Unfortunately for the wife's former boyfriend, Ghost was a bit sloppy and made a slight mistake. You see, Ghost didn't completely wipe the trail leading back to the boyfriend's computer, so the cartel was able to track the hack back to the boyfriend. Fortunately for the Ghost, he was able to wipe the trail back to himself, making the boyfriend's computer the end of the trail. The authorities believe that the boyfriend was tortured for over a month before he finally died. Unfortunately for the boyfriend, he just didn't have the information that the cartel wanted. None of that is actually real or believable, much less provable. But I thought that a fictional story like that might help you cope. True, I do believe that you didn't do exactly what the evidence says you did, but no, you are not even close to innocent. Now, just sign the papers. Do you think it's bad just licking one girl? Just think about what life would be like if the wrong person happened to stumble on some information that shows you as being a jailhouse snitch. I watched as her face went from white to red. "You bastard!" she screamed as she lunged towards me. There is a reason that the guards secure the cuffs to the table. There is also a reason that the chains are short enough to prevent the prisoner from reaching someone on the other side of the table. I walked out as they dragged her away, screaming. I got in the cheap throwaway car and drove to the mall. After parking, I left Mark in the car and walked through to the other side where my real car was waiting for me. With my new identity, I drove away. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.